G'day guys, how we going? So I'm trying out a bit of a different format with this one. I'm going to do a review of these Kings spotlights, and I'm hopefully going to do a few more reviews in the future as well if this video goes well. So let me know what you think at the end, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you want to see something else reviewed. I'm keen to hear it. Straight up, I'm just going to say that I really like these lights and I think they're great value for money. Straight off the bat, I would definitely recommend these to anyone looking. I'm going to break that down a bit further and get into what I like about them, what I don't like, and even compare them to a couple of other lights from ARB and Lightforce. I think these things are, for the price, really well made. They've got a super strong mount. I've had no issues with vibrations or moving or anything. Just tightened them right down when I first got them and had no trouble at all. So these things actually, for $129 last I checked, which was a bit earlier today, come with the loom as well. It comes with this waterproof plug here, comes with the switch, the fuse, everything ready to go. I modified it a bit to suit mine because I already had a switch in the cab from some old spotties. But yeah, it's pretty impressive what it comes with for the price. We like to test things properly here, and what we did, we got Nathan to go ahead and actually roll his car onto these lights. And as you can see in the photos here, these are actually the older model, but very similar design, similar bracket and everything. The lights still actually work, and it broke the mounts on his roll bar rather than the base of the light. The lights still work and everything, we've tried them, they're still good. So they'll be going back on his new car. And the mounts are fine, it might look bent, but that's actually the steel of his roll bar. The light itself, you wouldn't even know is not a new light. So I bought these lights myself. Everything in this video is my own opinion. I didn't get sent anything, although I wouldn't say no to being sent lights in the future if you're watching. But yeah, these things are pretty sweet for the money. The only thing I don't like about them, or if you notice, these don't look the same as the normal Kings lights with the orange outside. I don't like the branding that comes on them. I just ripped those outer rings off. I got another video actually. I'll put a link to that up here. Where I pulled them off and painted them just before I put them on my car. Just super easy to do, probably took like 15 minutes all up, including pulling them off, painting and putting them back on. Yeah, so I've used these things for a few months now. I got them a little while back. I've taken them on a couple of long trips, a couple of beach trips. Went to the Roma races recently, just before Christmas. That was about 6 hours straight of night driving, using these things the whole way, flipping them on and off constantly with oncoming traffic. Had no issues with them at all, plenty of light output. There was literally thousands of kangaroos lining the road, and yeah, the spread from these things was sweet. I could see the kangaroos if they're going to jump out a few hundred meters ahead, which made the trip a lot safer than it otherwise would have been. So now I'm going to compare these to a couple of other lights on the market. I'm going to compare these to the ARB AR31 Intensity V2s and the Lightforce Genesis Professional Editions. And I'm actually going to compare all the 9-inch versions. So these are the 7-inch, but I'm going to be comparing the specs from the 9-inch versions of these, which are basically identical. They have a couple of extra LEDs and are slightly bigger in physical size. But apart from that, exact same build quality, exact same layout, everything, just a little bit bigger and a couple more LEDs. The reason I'm comparing those rather than the 7-inch is because it was a bit of a fairer comparison with the other brands, and that info was a bit easier to find. So the first spec we got is lux. So the distance, you can still achieve 1 lux, which is a unit of measurement of light output. So the Kings Domin8r 9-inch lights put out 1 lux up to 1,206 meters. The ARB lights put out 1 lux up to 1,310 meters. And the Lightforce lights put out 1 lux at 1,120 meters. And all those claims are with a pair of lights. So none of those are for a single light. They are all a pair of 9-inch lights. So next up we got current draw. These spotties, as expected, are the most power hungry, and at 14.4 volts, they will use 14.3 amps. Next up is the ARB lights, which at 14.4 volts will use 11.5 amps. And finally, the most efficient lights of the bunch is the Lightforce Genesis, which at 14.4 volts only use 9.7 amps. Not a huge difference there. The only time I'd probably take that into consideration would be if you're planning to run a bunch of lights, like maybe a couple of light bars as well, and you want to run them all at the same time, then maybe you'd have to consider the toll on your alternator. But apart from that, you're really not going to notice the difference if it's just one pair of spotties on the front. It's not going to affect you. The power consumption isn't really going to be an issue at all. And finally, the most important thing for me, when deciding to buy these, was the price. So these things last time I checked, which was a little bit earlier today, February 2020, these were $129 for a pair of 9-inch lights, including the wiring loom. So the next closest in price out of these competitors is the Lightforce Genesis, which are $469 per light, and that is not including a wiring loom. And finally, as you might expect, the ARBs are the most expensive. The AR32 intensities coming in at $799 per light, not including a wiring loom. So that's pretty crazy to me. Buying a pair of these with a little bit worse build quality, maybe having to paint them to get rid of that branding if you're not really a fan of it like I was, and slightly worse power consumption, to get them for 150 bucks for a pair, over $1,600 for a pair. Could literally buy 10 of these for less than the price of one pair of ARB. So just one other thing to consider with that light output, my guess as to how they achieved such a big output for such a low price would probably be the beam angle. So these are very spotty and the light does fall off very quick to the sides. I haven't used the other lights, so I can't confirm, but I would say that's how they managed to get such good light output over such a long distance. So a couple of pros and cons. The pros, for the price, this is actually very good build quality. As you saw before, they survived the rollover with really no damage at all. So that was it's a light car, yeah, but it's still a car on top of it, which is pretty good. You got 2 hex head bolts on both sides and just one to secure it, but there are 2 more holes there where you could add additional bolts if you really wanted security, if you're doing a lot of corrugations or something like that. So it's kind of like a cast steel construction, a really solid mounting plate. The bezel here is plastic and the lens is plastic as well, but I haven't had any issues with stone chips, and it's been sitting on the front of my ute for a few months now, going down plenty of dirt roads and things like that, behind trucks, behind cars, and yeah, no issues so far. These have really good light output as well. As you saw in the specs, about 1200 meters, still getting 1 lux. That was with the 9-inch pair, and with this 7-inch pair, it's much the same. It drops off a little bit because there's not quite as many LEDs. And the cons, so the main thing I didn't like about these lights was just the branding kind of all over them, but obviously I can understand why they do that. The older version did have that big writing right across the covers. This one, I kind of like, just has the smaller writing, but I still kind of wanted to get rid of that. So as you saw in my video, I just pulled those rings off and painted them. The only other thing I would say would be a con to these lights is the relatively insecure kind of mounting there. So there's just 2 hex head bolts on each side holding it on. If someone did happen to know the size already and came prepared, you could probably rip these things off in about less than a minute. So if you park outside often, like overnight, I would probably suggest either Loctiting them in at least, or maybe changing them over for some Torx fittings. Just make it a little bit harder for someone to rip them off. That's gonna wrap it up for today. So in summing up, I would definitely recommend these lights to anyone looking for a pair. They're excellent value for money. You really can't go wrong for that price. Like I said, I've had no issues and I've been using them for a while now in plenty of different types of conditions. If you enjoy this content, consider subscribing or leaving a like. It helps me get these videos seen by more people. If there's something else you want to see me review, let me know in the comments below.